Hello and welcome to Crushing Comics. I'm your host Peter, and we are here to fall in love with my comic book collection all over again. We are down to just 3 bundles of books left, although this one, as you can see, is massive. And through the process of elimination of spending some time staring at the shelf, I've realized that they have to all be X-Men books because I know what I'm missing, and they're all X-Men books. So this is the first of those, and because it's so big, I thought let's do it first because who knows how many episodes I'm going to need to explain it, and then I'll have an idea of how many episodes there will really be left, and then we'll open those other 2 smaller ones, which I'm pretty certain are single volumes. This is just gigantic. Like, what was I thinking? This had to be like towards the end of the packing when it was in the middle of the night, and I was just like, please, let's be done. Oh my gosh, this is so many books. Okay. Okay, let's just take them a little bit at a time, So, first 2 we have here are Necrosha and Nation X. These were the 2 big X-Men books that happened after Uncanny X-Men crossed over with Dark Avengers for Utopia, and before the blockbuster Second Coming, which was also in this package, and we'll talk about shortly. So let's set the stage for what's happening. The X-Men had been living in San Francisco and kind of enjoying being integrated into the community, but as a part of their conflict with Norman Osborn, they get kind of backed into Utopia, which is part of Magneto's asteroid M that is floating in the San Francisco Bay. And so it's pretty much the whole mutant race, you know, it's been decimated and decimated and decimated again, and the majority of mutants are there. And in fact, Cyclops basically says, you know, anybody can come here. If you're a mutant, you're welcome here. And so we get a lot of mutants that are not X-Men, but that are living there because it's the only safe place for them to be. And there's far less than 200 of them at this point. So Cyclops had kind of been in this mode of being the general, the guy in charge of the X-Men ever since the beginning of Messiah Complex. Because, you know, Professor X is off the stage and you see Cyclops in this position of doing anything that he needs to do to keep the mutant race safe. And that continues through his commissioning of X-Force, Wolverine's X-Force, that's written by Kyle and Yost, that's been happening kind of off to the side of this, although we'll talk about them in Necrosha for a second. So Nation X is like where all of this stuff comes to a head. You know, they're on this island, Cyclops is in charge, and we get to just see like what the status quo is of being a mutant at this point in time. I love this book so much. I love it so much. It's written by Matt Fraction, and the art is mostly by Greg Land, I want to say, and probably Terry Dodson. And in addition to that, it has some serialized stories that were in Dark Reign: The List, and also in a mini-series called Nation X 1 through 4. And so primarily it collects Uncanny X-Men 515 to 522. I know a lot of people don't like Greg Land, and it's a totally other topic, but he's one of the few artists at Marvel that can turn out pages that look like this. And I know it's because he traces stuff, and he copies and pastes, and there's all of these things, but like, if you're somebody who's primarily been watching movies, and you come back to reading X-Men, as I did in 2010, and you open this and see these faces, you're excited, okay? Like, it'll take you a while to realize that he's tracing porn stars or whatever to get those faces. At first, you just see a page like that, and you're like, man, this guy is telling like a really bold visual story. So I was totally into it. So this covers that whole period, and it's an interesting period. It shows the X-Men kind of under siege on this Utopia island because their foes realize they've got them on the ropes. Maybe they can kind of get rid of them, and it tees up a lot of themes that will ultimately get paid off in Second Coming. So in addition to this, there's also X-Men Legacy at this point, which mostly stars Rogue, which is also happening on Utopia. And this book is so slim that part of me is a little bit bugged that they didn't capture some of the issues of X-Men Legacy that happened between the end of Utopia and the beginning of Second Coming, but some of them are in X Necrosha. So look, I know enough about X-Men fans, and I listen a lot to X-Men fans. I know this is me all talking on this video, but I do listen. And I know that not all X-Men fans loved this era. And I get that. They didn't like Fraction because they viewed Fraction as writing Broclops. He's the Cyclops who's kind of this like graduated frat bro. He's got the gorgeous girlfriend in Emma Frost. He's in control of the X-Men, and it's kind of just turns into the Cyclops show a little bit. And I get that. I do. But at the same time, this is one of the periods where we saw the most diverse, and I don't just mean diverse in terms of inclusivity, I mean diverse in terms of just so many damn characters. One of the most diverse casts of X-Men, kind of just milling around the background, doing their thing, living their lives. And it was one of the most interesting X-Men status quos. It was one of the few times that we really got all of the mutants doing one thing, and it was so different than anything we'd seen before. We'd seen mutants be hated and feared. We'd seen mutants be plentiful and have their own mutant town, right? But this is one of the few times that we kind of got to see them all together as a single culture working together. And to me, it was fascinating. It was a period that I could have read another 100 issues of. But, you know, X-Men was changing very rapidly at this point, and between the end of Messiah Complex in the 490s and the end of Second Coming at 525, so 30 issues, I feel like we'd been through like several versions of X-Men, right? The mansion being destroyed in Messiah Complex, them kind of having no place in the world and exploring all different places and kind of breaking up briefly, them being in San Francisco, them getting backed onto the island. Like it's just got so much development, and there's really no status quo that stays the same. So, while all of that was happening, Wolverine's X-Force is out there defending the X-Men against threats in a proactive way. And mostly that comes down to the fighting against these purifiers, these ultra-religious characters that are, you know, against mutant kind. They're an outgrowth ideologically of William Stryker, who we know all the way back from God Loved Man's Kills and who's been brought back multiple times. And and that's what a lot of that X-Force series is. But there's another theme happening in that X-Force series about kind of characters being brought back from the dead and this like mystical thing that's happening, and that is a thread that's involving Selene, who is the former Black Queen of the Hellfire Club, who we knew from New Mutants a long, long time ago. And Selene basically wants to leverage the fact that there's so many dead mutants at this point as a result of many X-Men stories, including things like E for Extinction, including, M-Day and the Decimation. And she's going to bring them all back and control them and ultimately take control of the mutant race and possibly the whole Earth. And it's up to X-Force to head this off. So this is a crossover in the way that like old school X-Men crossovers like Fall of the Mutants are, where the books do not directly intersect at all. So there's X-Force, which is like the main actual story. And then there's X-Men Legacy, which is the team, Rogue takes an away team, a very interesting away team that's like Iceman, Nightcrawler, Magneto. It's a really interesting mix that you really don't see mixed together too often, and takes them to Muir Island because there's a report of some new mutants showing up on the map. Also Psylocke, Colossus, and Destiny. Oh no, sorry, I spoiled a surprise. Destiny, of course, was Mystique's partner in life and adventures and in love. Chris Claremont snuck in that they were lesbians without editorial even realizing, because he just used language that they wouldn't recognize. And Destiny has been dead for a long time in X-Men books, and she's kind of like a second mother to Rogue, and she is one of the many mutants who comes back as the result of this move by Selene. And Rogue, it's not somebody Rogue wants to have a fight with. So not every one of these mutants that come back is evil and trying to kill the X-Men. So I really love that arc. And the New Mutants are actually stationed on Utopia and find themselves fighting against some past foes and the Hellions, who had been killed in Uncanny X-Men 281 when the Sentinels attacked the Hellfire Club while Storm and Jean Grey were visiting in that famous issue that is the cover of Bishop's Crossing. So lots of ties to past continuity in this story, and they don't directly cross over. Now the question I always wind up having, I'm going to jump off frame for a second here. The question I always wind up having is this repeated in the second X-Force hardcover? And like I've looked 100 times and I always forget. So for the record, the second X-Force hardcover collects X-Force 12 to 13, skips the Messiah War material, and then covers 17 through 20 in Annual 1, and Sex and Violence 1 through 3. This collects X-Force 21 through 25. So if you want the end of X-Force, well, really it ends in Second Coming, but if you want the end of the X-Force story from the Kyle and Yost books, you do need to buy X-Necrosha. There's not any other oversized coverage of this. You've got to do it, okay? So that answers that question once and for all. Of course, it's covered in my guide, but like I never remember the way that it is. So, you know, people I think were annoyed by X-Necrosha at the time because it was really just the end of X-Force that got franchised out to these two other books to give them something to do while we were waiting for Second Coming to happen. And that, I think, kind of, people were like, it's not a big deal, it's not a big crossover, what is this crap? It's a great story. It's a great X-Force story. It concludes a fantastic X-Force comic book. And it also gave the other titles some really interesting material that was a great tie to past continuity. So again, much like with the Nation X story, I have no complaints about it. And looking back, it was such good X-Men. Like right now, people are saying the X-Men is good about some titles that are truly bad. Like if you're I've read good superhero comic books. I read hundreds of good superhero comic books a week. And there's a lot of good superhero comic books coming out right now. So it's not like I'm just this curmudgeonly old person being like, comics are bad. But the X-Men comics right now are not universally good, which you've heard me talk about if you've been watching my This Week in X coverages. And like this was a period where like every X title was good. New Mutants was great. X-Men Legacy was amazing. Uncanny X-Men was doing this thing that we'd never seen before, even if you didn't love it. And to like badmouth these books kind of just makes me chuckle because like you didn't even know what was coming in the next 7 years of X-Men after this. You should have been clinging to these books with your life because it wasn't going to get this good again. It hasn't. In my opinion, X-Men like peaked in the period from Second Coming to Schism, which we're about to be talking about. So I'm gonna actually do another episode with that because I have so much to say about these books since it's when I came back to collecting X-Men. So we're gonna do a ceremonial shelving of these two, and then we're gonna come back right away for more. So here's the ceremonial shelving of X-Men Nation X and I never know, is it Necrosha X, X-Necrosha? On the spine it says Necrosha X. Okay, here's their shelving. So tune back in next time as we talk about an event that I didn't love at first, but have grown to really, really treasure, X-Men Second Coming. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Crushing Comics.